Okay, kiddos, welcome to Kids Discover Egypt Day 1. Are you guys excited for Kids Discover Egypt? I can't hear you out there. Are you excited for Kids Discover Egypt? All right, that's what I like to hear. Okay, my name's Diego Rigoyen. This is my co-host Hatshepsut, and we are getting started with some fun activities, and we're gonna learn about Egypt all along the way. So today's activity is a stela. We're gonna be creating this stela, well, your own stela, but the ancient Egyptians used to use stelas to document history. They would tell stories, and they'd even make wishes on their stelas. So you're gonna be making a stela similar to this one, but it's gonna be your own very special stela, and you can even make a wish or tell your own story if you want to. This one here is about me and my cat. Yep, I like cats. So you're gonna be making a stela, and it's really simple. You're only gonna need a few supplies today. You're gonna need a couple sheets of construction paper. You're gonna want to have a pencil ready so that you can draw things out, and then any sort of coloring materials that you might need. So if that's markers or color pencils, anything that you want to decorate your stela, you can use in today's activity. Okay, so for this project, you're gonna need a piece of paper. You will need some scissors. You're gonna need a pencil. Going to maybe want a ruler. And then any sort of supplies to decorate. So to start off, we're gonna take our sheet of paper, and with our ruler, we're just gonna draw a straight line on the bottom. And then we'll draw 2 straight lines on the sides, about 3/4 of the way up the page, so not all the way to the top. And then here you're gonna decide how wide you want yours to be. I think I'm gonna have mine about that wide. And we'll go from here and down. So now we have our 2 sides and our bottom, and then this is the hard part, because you have to do a half circle. And you could grab a plate or something if you wanted to trace it, but if not, you can just kind of go freehand, half circle, and then you look at it from the top, and then you can kind of fix your half circle a little bit if you want it to be a little different. And don't worry if it's not perfect. The ancient Egyptians used to carve these out of stone, and sometimes they weren't perfect either. So once you're done, you can just kind of erase your extra lines, and now you have your template. So now that you have this, you're gonna wanna think about what kind of story you wanna tell. You're gonna wanna think about who you're gonna wanna mention, and then you can kind of plot things out. So the way we're gonna do that, a couple things to remember that are important. We wanna think about the overall design and layout. Where are things going to go? Now, the ancient Egyptians were a big fan of symmetry. So what I think I'm gonna do is here at the top, I'm going to write my name going this way. And then I'm going to write my name again going that way. So I'm doing this all in pencil, and I can come back and erase things and decide later. And then here, I think what I'll do is I'll do a portrait of myself, kind of like in this space. And then I might do a portrait of my fiance right here. And then in the middle, I'm gonna have my cat. So right there, that's where my cat's gonna go. And then below here, I might have a little story. Kind of like that. And that looks like pretty good spacing. And what you could do for spacing too is you could get your ruler. And this might actually be better, but you can get your ruler and draw a line. And then you can line up against that edge and draw your next line. That way it's all evenly spaced. I like that better, so let's do that. And then here at the bottom, I think I'm gonna have a picture of a couple things. So the ancient Egyptians were very fond of symmetry. And symmetry means when your two sides are the same. So for example, my two hands right here are symmetrical. Now if I close one hand, they're no longer symmetrical. It's asymmetrical. So the Egyptians would do everything they could to make things symmetrical. And so in order to do that, sometimes they would write in different directions. Now we always write from left to right, and the Egyptians would change the direction they wrote depending on whatever symmetry they were going for in their work. So I think I have a pretty good design here. Maybe I'll write my name here. Maybe I'll write my fiance's name there. And I can even write my cat's name right here going down. That sounds pretty good. So now let me show you how you're actually going to write your story. So you should be able to download and print this paper right here. Now this sheet here shows you the phonetic translation of letters into hieroglyphs. And what that means is that this symbol, this bird symbol right here, represents the A sound. And so this foot represents the B sound. So if I wanted to write my name, Diego, I would use the D, and then I can go I and E. And notice that the I and the E have the same symbol. It's because they're kind of similar sounds. So it doesn't represent the letter, but it represents the sound that the letter makes. And then I would write the letter G, which is a jar stand, and then O, which is a lasso. So I can kind of begin to sketch that in over here. And again, I'm doing everything in pencil, so I can erase stuff if I need to. So now on this side, I can do my fiance's name. Now, when you're reading the hieroglyphs, you always read into the direction of something. So for example, if we look at this lion, you're going to read, when you read hieroglyphics, into the face of the lion, into the face of the cobra. If we wanted to write the other way, that means we would have to flip things around so that they are mirrored. So instead of your hand, instead of your hand being this way, for example, this way, and reading into it, if I wanted to write the opposite direction, I have to flip it around and write this way into it. So let me give you an example. It starts with the letter C. Now you see this little loop here? What I'm going to do, because I'm writing the opposite direction now, is I'm going to put the loop on the back side here, because I'm going the other way. I'm not going this way now, I'm going this way. And the next letter is the letter A. So you see the vulture. Now the vulture is kind of one of the harder ones to draw. Okay, that's good enough for me. All right, so now that I have that done, I have my name, my fiance's name. So now we'll draw ourselves in kind of an Egyptian style. Okay, nice. So I have myself here, and I'm wearing kind of the skirts that the Egyptian men would wear. And then here we have my fiance who's wearing kind of the long dresses, so that the Egyptian women would wear. And then next, here in the center, I think I'm going to draw our cat. And I wanted to write the name going downward here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So here we have my cat and my cat's name. Put some eyes on the owl here. And his beak. And then we have myself and my fiance. And now we're going to write a little story. And it could be something really simple, just like one sentence or something. Nothing too complicated. So here I'm going to write 2 people with their cat happy. Or 2 people happy with their cat. I think that sounds good. So I'm going to go by letter, and we're going to write from left to right. That way I don't have to flip any of these symbols around. I'm going to just write this way, like this. So just how they see them here, we can write them. So again, these symbols don't necessarily represent the letters, but rather the sounds. So, for example, down here we have this symbol that represents the TH sound, so the th sound. So when I'm writing with, I can use this symbol for the T and the H. And then last, we're going to draw our Egyptian cat. And here I have the cat facing this way, but now the cat's going to face the other way because we're reading it this way. So you always read into the face. All right, cool. So now I have all the writing done. And now what I can do is add some color. Okay, now that most of it's colored, I can start adding some design details. And I think it might be really nice to put something here. Maybe put a heart. I think I might put a heart right down here. I think that would look great. And then I think I might put a couple eyes of Horus up here. That would be fun. And maybe I will put a couple of Jed pillars on either side here. And you should be able to download this as well, and along with this sheet here. So you have all the templates you need for designing your Stella. Okay, so now that we have our stela all colored up, you can see I added some marker outlines. So you just add a pop of color there. And you could do some design in the background or add a different color in the background if you want. But the next step now is actually to cut out the shape of our stela. So we're just going to cut along the line. Okay, so here we have our stela, and we're just about done. We have some options. You can do a different color in the background if you want to. You notice that I didn't erase the lines here that kind of are the guidelines for our writing. And that's because often stelas had lines like that in between the writing. They were probably guidelines for when they were carving into the stone, the hieroglyphics. So I think it looks okay like that, and it's all done. So now that you know your hieroglyphs and you have these two resources, as we move through the week with different activities, you can use these to decorate the different things that we make over this week. So you're probably not entirely finished with yours, but as you work on it, we're gonna have a little talk with Brian Kramer, an Egyptologist, and he's going to tell us more about the stelas.
Hello, I'm Brian Kramer. I'm research Egyptologist at the Robert and Frances Fullerton Museum of Art on the California State University San Bernardino campus. And today I'm going to explain a little bit about ancient Egyptian stelas, or stelae, the proper plural for the word stela. Now, you've probably made a copy of your own stela as part of the Kids Discover Egypt program. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what the ancient Egyptians put on their stelae, no matter what you put on your own stela. But first of all, let me explain what the word stela means. It's kind of a weird word. Not everyone hears that every day, even if you're an Egyptologist. A stela is a Greek word, and it really means a thing that's been placed down or dedicated. And it's usually a term used for large blocks of stone that are inscribed, that have an important text put on them that the people who put them there wanted everyone to know about. And in ancient Egypt especially, stelae look like this. You can tell them apart from other inscriptions, usually by their rounded top, and they're isolated objects. Now, the texts and the artwork that the Egyptians put on stelae like this can be a number of topics. This happens to be a funerary stela, and the other ones I will show you today are also funerary stela. Now, I don't know what you put on your own stela, but it was probably not funerary. At least that could be kind of depressing. But the Egyptians, since they were enamored with the idea of what happened to them after they died, put funerary stelae in a lot of places. Now, what's a funeral stela? A funeral stela is a stela that shows a text or a picture related to someone who has died. And the way that you can tell this person has died on this stela, for example, is the fact that it's dedicated to the ka of the individual, or named Sheshonq. And Sheshonq is also called a venerated one, which is a term that you use for people who have died. Stelae like this from ancient Egypt are very numerous. You can find them in all kinds of museums around the world, but they usually only show a few variations on a theme. This is a stela that is from Egypt's 26th dynasty, so about 600 to 500 BC, and it's pretty typical of its period of time for a funeral stela. If you've been to a cemetery recently, you've probably seen something that looks very similar to this, because funerary stelae are very similar to what we think of nowadays as tombstones. They serve a purpose of commemorating the memory of an individual who has died. Sheshank is depicting himself on this stela in a number of ways. And the stelae from ancient Egypt actually show you certain things that are found in many different places. For this period of time, it's very common to show this kind of scene here, where you have the deceased person greeting the seated god Osiris. I'm sure that you've heard about Osiris. Osiris was the god who was king of the dead people. And Sheshank is greeting him and his wife, Isis, who's standing behind him, in a moment that the Egyptians imagined happened when you died. It's a very critical moment to what happened after you died. Sheshank is being introduced to his new king, the king of the dead people, Osiris, and he's hoping to make a good impression. In order to do that, not only is he making a traditional gesture of greeting and praise, but he's also brought a nice table of offerings with bread and a lotus flower on top as a gesture to request that he be accepted in Osiris's kingdom. This image is very commonly depicted throughout ancient Egypt, especially on funerary stelae. The rest of it is also meaningful. You have on the top an image of the sun with two wings of falcons coming out of its side, and from which two cobra snakes are hanging from the sun disk. This is commonly depicted on the top of stelae. It is a motif that kind of shows off the sky. It's kind of an image of the sun as it passes through the sky, or in this case, perhaps the underworld. When the sun sets, it goes through the underworld. It's kind of a frame, it's just a way of showing there's a sky there. The thing at the bottom, this long hieroglyphic text, is important for most funerary stelae from ancient Egypt. It's a text that you will find on all the examples I show you today, and you may find it on every stela that relates to a dead person from ancient Egypt. It is a magical spell, and it is a formulaic magical spell. That is to say, it always kind of looks the same way. Egyptologists who study things like this have given it a name. They call it the offering formula, or the royal offering formula. And the reason for that is because this magical spell is intended really to ensure that the dead person gets good things to eat when they are in the afterlife. But there are three elements to these funerary stelae, for these offering formulae that are different in different cases, but tell the information about what's relevant to it. One is they name gods. This one names the god Sokar Osiris, which is a version of Osiris, and the god Anubis, the jackal-headed god. As gods who will ensure that the offering is given, or will spiritually give the offering to Sheshank. The second thing they have to name is all the good things that he expects to get. And so this stela names a standard set of offerings, which include beer, they include bread, they include meats, they include incense, which is something that they're very concerned about in many of these cases. It also includes wine. So it's a provision for a party, more or less, an endless party for Sheshank. And the third thing you need on these offering formulae is his name, and sometimes his CV, his titles that he earned in life, and especially the name of his ancestor, either just his mother or his father, and sometimes his grandparents and great-grandparents going back a long period of time. Those are the three things you need in every offering formula, and in order to make it work for you in the afterlife. And that's what they put on this and most other cases of an offering formula. So I'm going to show you two other stelae now that are from a different period of time and give you a different idea of what you could include on something that commemorates your memory in the afterlife. So, this is another stela. It is a classical example of a Middle Kingdom stela. It's specifically 12th dynasty, so it's about 1850 BC. You know the king is Amenemhat III. But it shows you what you might depict on a stela to commemorate your memory at that period of time. And you notice that it's very different in a number of ways. First of all, there's no god Osiris. The deceased person is not greeting anyone in particular who was king of the afterlife. That's just not what they did at that period of time. They don't show people interacting with gods. What you do have is a family scene. And this is the critical part of a stela at this period of time. It shows the person who is the most important deceased person being honored by the stela, and that is this man here, seated at the front of a long bench with a lotus flower held up to his nose as a nice gesture and an indication that he's kind of relaxing and in a party-like atmosphere. Behind him is his wife, and behind both of them standing is their daughter. Now, he is the actual owner of the stela, and he is named in it. We know his name. His name is Amennacht, which is a fairly common name at that period of time. The other important individual depicted in this part on the right side is a smaller figure, a man who is doing things, and he is almost certainly his son, the son of Amennacht. Now, his name is actually obscured by scratches on the stela, and so I can't read it to you, but this is the role that he's fulfilling is extremely important in the propagation of the memory and the afterlife cult for the dead person, Amennacht. His son is pouring a libation of liquid out of a vessel. It's landing it in a cup on top of a stand, and in front of that there is a table with jars of beer and a mat with cuts of meat and bread and even a clump of onions in the middle. All of these are gestures of the offering cult. So the offering cult was the thing that the dead person hoped to get every day from their relatives and the priests they paid to bring it. It consisted of lots of food. That was the idea, that they wanted to have that in their tombs so that they could benefit from those offerings in the afterlife as well. So his son is performing his duties to bring offerings to his father. Below, and this is a thing that is especially common in the Middle Kingdom, below you have a picture of the extended family, which includes another individual who's another son, and a individual in the middle who represents either him, which I can't actually read it there, maybe him, or another person who is, yes, he's called Sopernacht. Okay, so it's another individual here who's very likely him, showing the propagation of the continuation of the family and the cult for the next generation. So this is a very common kind of stela for the Middle Kingdom. You notice it has two eyes at the top. At that period of time, they put eyes at the top of the stele instead of the wing sun disk. It's not 100% known what that means, but it has analogies in other monuments, and so it very likely is a way for the deceased person to see the world and magically by looking through the eyes. And so that will lead us to the third and final stela I'm going to tell you about today, which is over here in the case, which you notice is a lot smaller, and so it's very likely it was kind of less expensive to make. And if you get the light correct, you can see on the top there are those two eyes. It's roughly contemporary to the last stela by maybe 100 years or so. It's later. But the same kind of scene is being shown at the bottom. You have two individuals, one on the left holding a flower and one on the right standing, who actually has his hand on his heart. It's making a gesture of offering a pile of food found in the middle. Now, these two individuals are interesting because we know from reading the text that it's not his son. The text is obscured, but actually it says his name is Amenhotep, and the guy on the left is named Waj'amun. And the line above Amenhotep says it is his brother who makes his name to flourish, which indicates that this is not the normal circumstances that people are expected to die in. If you died and you had a son, you expected your son to perform your offering cult for you. Waj'amun very likely died without a son, and so his brother had to take that role. And he provided this stela. Almost certainly it was him who was Amenhotep who paid for it. He provided that stela as the monument to commemorate his brother's memory. It's also pretty small, so we don't actually know the nature of their relationship. But stelae are again doing the same things. They're commemorating the memory of a dead person. And the text on the top here and in the text on the last stela as well is exactly the same formula that was found on the very first stela I showed you. It's the offering formula. And so as you know from there, when I explained it, that there will be three things in there that are important for the magical effectiveness of that stela. That is the name of a god, the name of the deceased person, and the list of all the good things that they did, in which it is actually found in there. That's where we get the name Waj'amun.